Welcome back. Tonight we're taking a closer look at one of the most serious developments in global politics right now, the growing conflict involving the United States and Iran, and the political debate that is unfolding around it here in America. In just a few days, the situation has rapidly escalated. Military operations are underway, casualties are being reported, and lawmakers in Washington are raising difficult questions about the strategy, the objectives, and the long-term consequences. At the same time, political dynamics inside the United States are shifting, with elections approaching and debates over foreign policy becoming a central issue. In this report, we're going to break down what led to the latest U.S. strikes against Iran, why officials have offered different explanations, how members of Congress are responding, and what this conflict could mean for the future. Before diving into the conflict itself, it's important to understand the political environment in which these events are taking place. Across the United States, political campaigns are heating up as candidates begin positioning themselves on major national issues, including foreign policy. One figure drawing attention recently is James Tallarico, a candidate who delivered a speech focused on what he described as deep systemic problems in American society. In his remarks, he argued that economic inequality, political polarization, and social division are signs of broader structural issues within the country. Using religious imagery and references to justice, he called on voters to challenge systems of power and work toward change through democratic participation. Whether voters agree or disagree with that message, it reflects a wider trend. Political rhetoric is increasingly linking domestic challenges with international policy. And that brings us directly to the issue dominating headlines, the rapidly escalating conflict between the United States and Iran. The situation intensified after the United States launched military strikes targeting Iranian assets. According to reports, these operations were designed to disrupt military capabilities and deter potential attacks against American forces in the region. However, the early days of the conflict have already come with significant consequences. Reports indicate that Iranian civilian casualties have been recorded. Several American service members have also been killed. These losses have deeply affected military families and communities across the United States. For many Americans, the human cost of war immediately raises a central question. Why was this conflict initiated, and what is the strategic objective? That question has become the focus of intense debate in Washington. Officials within the administration have provided several explanations for the strikes. One explanation was presented by Marco Rubio, who stated that intelligence suggested an imminent threat from Iran targeting American personnel or assets. In this interpretation, the military action was designed as a preemptive measure, intended to prevent an attack before it occurred. However, reports from congressional briefings indicated that some defense officials did not characterize the threat as imminent. Another explanation suggested the strikes were connected to broader regional tensions, particularly involving Israel and Iran. Some officials argued that an expected Israeli operation could have triggered retaliation against American forces, making preemptive action necessary. Meanwhile, Donald Trump offered his own explanation, saying he believed Iran was preparing to strike first and that decisive action was required to prevent that outcome. These differing explanations have created confusion among both lawmakers and the public about the exact reasoning behind the operation. Beyond the question of why the strikes occurred, another major issue is what the United States ultimately hopes to achieve. Some statements from political leaders suggested that the conflict could encourage political change within Iran. At one point, President Trump addressed the Iranian public directly and spoke about the possibility of them taking control of their government. That message led some observers to interpret the operation as potentially supporting regime change. However, defense officials later stated that it was not. Military strategy typically requires clear objectives, timelines, and exit strategies. When those elements appear unclear, debate tends to intensify, particularly in Congress. Another key issue is the potential duration of the conflict. Some officials have estimated that the operation could last several weeks. Others have suggested that the timeline remains flexible depending on developments on the ground. In modern conflicts, military operations can evolve quickly. What begins as a limited strike campaign can sometimes expand if regional dynamics change or if retaliation occurs. That uncertainty leads to more analyst questions. One of the biggest concerns among Americans is whether U.S. ground troops could eventually be sent into Iran. Some lawmakers, including Lindsey Graham, have argued that there should be no American boots on the ground. However, the administration has not completely ruled out that possibility. Historically, U.S. military engagements have sometimes expanded beyond their initial scope. Members of Congress are also asking detailed questions about the strategic planning behind the operation. One voice speaking publicly is Mark Kelly. Kelly previously served as a Navy pilot and flew combat missions during the Gulf War. Drawing on that experience, he emphasized the seriousness of these decisions. According to Kelly, military operations require careful preparation, clear goals, and a thorough understanding of potential consequences. He warned that without a clearly defined strategy, conflicts can extend longer than expected. These concerns are part of Congress's constitutional role. Beyond the battlefield, officials are also discussing the potential domestic impact of the conflict. Security experts say tensions increase cyber risks. The Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency plays a key role in protecting American infrastructure from digital threats during periods of tension. Lawmakers are therefore emphasizing the importance of strong cybersecurity leadership and preparedness during periods of international tension. As the conflict continues to unfold, many questions remain unanswered. Americans are watching closely to see how long operations will continue, whether diplomatic solutions can emerge, and what the long-term consequences might be for global stability. Wars rarely develop as expected. That's why policymakers and military leaders are all engaged in intense discussions about the next steps. The focus remains on protecting American personnel. We will continue to follow developments closely and provide updates as new information becomes available. Thank you for watching.